Is a violin worth $10 million? In today's video, I'm going to be answering that exact question. For those of you who are new to the channel, I talk a lot about violin content, classical music news, and if you're not a subscriber, I encourage you to subscribe, hit the bell notifications so that way you get notified for when new videos come out. Now, onto the video. There's a violin that will be going to auction that could fetch up to $10 million. I have some thoughts on this auction because it raises some questions as to whether a piece of art like this is worth $10 million. Let's look at the facts and the history behind this particular violin. The luthier who created this particular violin is Giuseppe Guarneri, and Guarneri was a violin luthier in Italy around the same time as Antonio Stradivari. And this violin was crafted in 1736. And just to give you some perspective, that was about 4 years when Joseph Haydn was born. So yeah, really early 18th century violin. The starting price of this Guarneri violin is going to start at 4 million euros, which is equivalent to $4.5 million. Is a violin worth that much? Well, I feel like there are a bunch of factors that go into the price of this violin. There are around 250 violins that we know of that are being performed around the world by this maker. And some other detailed factors that could actually raise the price of this violin is tone quality, is the aesthetic, is the precision and the detail behind this instrument. So let's talk about the actual economics of it all, because your average classical musician is not going to buy this particular instrument. This instrument is primarily suited towards soloists or someone who is in a well-renowned chamber group. Not even that. I mean, the Guarneris are known for being soloistic instruments, to be performed as a solo instrument in a concert hall. And also, an average violinist is not going to have $4 million in change just to be able to buy this instrument. For something that starts at a $4 million or $4.5 million starting price, who is the ideal customer for a violin this expensive and this rare? Well, it's not uncommon for large organizations to look at this as an investment. Large organizations meaning high-profile schools, nonprofit organizations that have a large endowment, or even banks. And the reason why they want to purchase an instrument like this that's so rare is kind of in the same realm as like buying a Picasso. You want to buy it because it's rare. It's a rare thing and no one else has it. It is a one of a kind. And for large organizations like banks, they want to diversify their portfolio and they're trying to buy an asset that actually increases in value over time. So a bank might buy this as, again, another form of asset allocation to diversify their portfolio. They have, various investments in various things and an instrument like this might be on the horizon for them as a potential investment that will reap returns later on. However, for people who are actually trying to secure their investment, a violin actually needs to be played on. So it's not uncommon for an organization such as a bank or a nonprofit to actually loan an instrument via a competition or through an orchestra, and a concertmaster may play on that particular instrument. That's not uncommon at all. As a matter of fact, the Juilliard School has various Stradivari violins in their portfolio where specific students can use that instrument for competitions, or they're using that for performances so that way they can get high quality recordings. Another organization based in Chicago, Illinois is the Stradivari Society, where they have a ton of violins in their portfolio and they have various artists perform on these instruments. And there are also high quality instruments in the Library of Congress. There's an entire quartet of Stradivari instruments. The Met Museum in New York City also has Stradivari instruments, and they actually have a few Amatis on display. So an organization who's looking at this violin, it's not just for the average musician. This is for someone who is in a high profile orchestra, probably like in a German orchestra or a bank in the US, or I don't want to just limit it to the US or Germany. It could be even in another country in Europe or around the world that might be interested in getting this violin into the hands of their high profile orchestra for musicians to play on. We're not talking about individuals buying these instruments, or it's very rare to talk about someone who's going to buy an instrument like this. This is something that I learned from a violin podcast episode when I was in the early stages of the violin podcast. I had my good friend Max Tan talk to me about violins and how musicians really are not able to afford the tools of their trade, because we're going to music school to learn this art, to learn this craft, and it's very difficult for us to get our hands on a really good instrument like this. Like this Guarneri is going to easily fetch over $4 million. Will it fetch over 10 million? Well, I'm not entirely sure about that. It all depends on how the auction actually goes. So generally, musicians cannot afford the tools of their trade. Think about that for a second. We really can't, because if you're a professional musician and you need something that is a higher caliber, you know, something that's maybe even a $20,000 instrument. Now, that's not to say that a $20,000 instrument will guarantee you a position in an orchestra. What I'm saying is that a violin such as a Guarneri, or, you know, a modern instrument that is worth maybe around $20,000 or over $20,000, it may help you even more, but it's not 100% going to help you get into an orchestra. You still have to practice. You still have to, you know, maintain your chops just to be able to audition for that kind of stuff. And that's why a lot of these organizations who buy these instruments will allow, you know, students or up and rising stars or winners of competitions to get those instruments on a loan to perform on for 2-3 years and then return it back. And then they have these instruments in circulation with different players, so that way they can keep the value. Because if the violin is not played on, then the instrument as a whole does not sound good, and then the actual value will decrease as a result. Now, I'm not a violin expert. I'm not like a violin salesperson. If you're a violin salesperson, let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think of this $10 million Guarneri that's going to be on sale or in auction? I'm really curious to know your thoughts, because I'm not an expert on, you know, violin dealing and, you know, violin sale. These are just based on my own conversations with other luthiers, my other conversations with the violin podcast. So I want to get this conversation going. So this Guarneri violin that's going to be auctioned off for a minimum of $4 million, again, is not for the average classical musician. You know, you're not going to have someone, you know, like a specific individual violinist say, you know, I'm going to pay $4 million for this, because the reality is that there are a lot of modern makers today that have, you know, found all the secrets of Guarneri, have found all the secrets of Stradivari, Amati, and, you know, they have the models that they've left behind us for hundreds and hundreds of years. So there are no secrets with these instruments and the quality of wood and the specifications that they use. You could actually get a decent violin, not for $4 million, but even for $10,000, believe it or not. You can get a decent quality violin for $10,000. I also want to remind you that your body is your Strad, not your Strad is your body. So you create the sound of the violin, not the violin itself. You know, a violin needs an operator for it to make a sound in general. So I want you to leave with this note that even though, you know, we're looking at this violin for $4 million or $10 million, and it's like, oh, I wish I could play on a violin like that. Well, you can, and actually it could be even more affordable. You could talk to a luthier in your local town, or a luthier in another state or in another country, to produce a similar violin based off a Stradivari model or a Guarneri model or an Amati model, or even their own model that they have experimented with. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you think this Guarneri is going to fetch for 10 million? It might. I think I'm going to go for like 8 million. 4 million to 8 million. I think that's when this Guarneri, I feel like that's going to be the sweet spot. Let me know how much this violin is going to be worth down below. And if you like this video, thanks so much for watching. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, so that way you get notified for when new videos like this come out. It helps me out as a content creator to provide more videos for you. Also, I run a lot of violin tutorials and violin tips on the channel, so if you haven't seen those yet, I'm going to leave violin videos over here and over here for you to check out. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.